Rachel Maddow, what's your headline tonight?
My headline tonight, David, is final days in Pennsylvania prove how well Barack Obama takes a punch. This has been the main concern among the Democratic powers that be about a potential Barack Obama nomination. How well can he take a punch? How will he bear up under the inevitable scrutiny and the inevitable criticism and the inevitable frustrations and slime of a big national campaign? And, you know, so far we've seen the jiggles in the polls. We've seen his performance, for example, in the debate this week. But when Pennsylvania voters go to the polls on Tuesday, we will truly have the proof in the pudding of how he bears up under this kinds of intense scrutiny.
And he's continued to close the gap in Pennsylvania during what has been a rough time with no voting and plenty of opportunity for Hillary Clinton to make him look worse, to really attack him. Yeah,
and the question is whether or not there's any sort of Bradley effect in those polls, whether or not the way people think they're going to vote is going to change once they're actually in there in the voting booth all alone with that curtain closed behind them. The voting is really going to be interesting, and in particular to see how closely it matches the last polling.
Given her high negatives in likability and credibility, should she have dealt with this earlier, contrary to Mark Penn's advice not to focus on these elements, Rachel, particularly at a time when I know that she's got other people who were sort of kept out of the fold when Mark Penn was there, who are going on these tours, the Hillary I Know tours, to try to humanize her a little bit more. Is it too late?
Well, I don't know if it's too late. I mean, at this point, this campaign, the calendar is so hard to understand at this point that I'm not sure we can call anything too late at any point. I actually think that clip is very, very appealing for Hillary Clinton. I think when she does speak in a way that seems unscripted and off camera and in a human way, I do think she does connect with voters, and that her supposed charisma deficit just disappears. So I don't know if the timing is right on this, but I do think it works. And if people are going to be voting in 4 days, why not do it now?
Our first Smart Take tonight, there's been a lot of talk about the dream ticket with Clinton and Obama today. Peggy Noonan proposed her own twofer involving McCain and Obama. To the quote board, it seems to me it would be a brilliant thing for McCain to announce he means to be a one-term president, that he means to have a clean, serious one-term presidency in which he will do things those under pressure of re-election do not and cannot do. This would be received as a refreshment, a way out for the voters in a year they seem to want a way out. For many in the middle, it would be a twofer. You get a good man, only 4 years, and Mr. Obama gets to grow and deepen at the same time. Rachel, you think there's any thing to grasp onto there?
I think Peggy Noonan is good at shoving in the shiv with a smile. The point of this is to make the point that Barack Obama needs to grow and deepen, which I think Barack Obama supporters do not believe. The problem also with the argument that John McCain would somehow be unconstrained in a way that voters would find favorable by promising to only vote one term, I'm not sure that voters feel more satisfied with second-term presidents than they do with first-term presidents. I think there's as much sentiment among voters that a second-term president is unaccountable and therefore more likely to do things that are either embarrassing or radical. Right. So I think the argument doesn't work for me on a couple of levels.
Well, but also, Michael, he becomes a lame duck very quickly if you're a one-term president.
He starts as a lame duck.
If you're an insider and you think in those terms, I like the strategy. I think this echoes what Harold said earlier in that John McCain has got to play the maverick card. And what this would say is he is coming into D.C. to kick butt and take names, and it's only going to take him 4 years. I like it. I think it makes sense.
He can have 4 years of all the fun that George Bush is having right now, seeing his power go down the drain.
He's not beholden to anybody. He's only there for one term.
Neither's George
All right,
Bush
let me move on to
now.
our second Smart Take tonight. Newsweek's Michael Hirsch writes about the Democrats' wimp factor and sees shades of 04 in the recent attacks on Obama. To the quote board, between the questions about Obama's meager association with William Ayers, a former weatherman, and not the meteorological variety, by the way, and the suspicions raised by his lack of a flag lapel pin, the likely nominee is slowly being turned into John Kerry. He is becoming, in other words, a candidate who may be mostly right about national security, but who will lack the red state street cred to carry his point and the election. Anything to that, Harold?
Look, there's no doubt that there will be an intense focus on the part of a Republican machine, including part of McCain's team, to paint and to describe and to caricature Barack if he's the nominee, which looks likely, to caricature him in a way that puts him outside of the mainstream. Barack will do the same, and Democrats will do the same to John McCain. The question becomes, which of these candidates is able to resonate fastest, quickest, and most substantively with the national voting audience? I do think Peggy Noonan has an interesting point. He would be a lame duck right away, but he's got to figure out an angle. He's got to figure out something, because Barack's appeal, if he's the nominee, is going to be so overwhelming in the numbers number of new voters he will bring to the fold, in a lot of ways, could just overwhelm that Republican machine and overwhelm John McCain before he gets started.
Let me get to a final smart take here, and Rachel, comment on both. This one from the New York Times, David Brooks, who says Obama's looking vulnerable and it will hurt him in November. To the quote board, it was inevitable that the period of yes we can deification would come to an end. It was not inevitable that Obama would now look so vulnerable. He'll win the nomination, but in a matchup against John McCain, he is behind in Florida, Missouri, and Ohio, and merely tied in must-win states like Michigan, Minnesota, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Looking at the map, Rachel?
Polls at this point in the campaign, when there's not yet a general election underway and the Democrats don't yet have a nominee, are pointless.
Bingo.
I think that what's happening right now to Barack Obama was inevitably going to happen to Barack Obama. It's probably happening earlier than he expected that it would if he had mapped out his nomination. But no matter who the Democratic nominee, if it was Harold Ford or Sam Nunn or anybody, any Democratic nominee is not insulated from attacks on national security bases by their bio or by their record. Any Democrat will be attacked as weak on national security and weak on patriotism. That is how American two-party politics work right now. And so you can't expect that any other nominee would have an easier time on those issues than Obama. We just now know the character of the challenges that Obama faces on those grounds.
All right, let me